When I hear people, I choose to do this every day. This is what I love doing. I know I'm going towards an inspirational life. It was Henry David Thoreau who talked about living a quiet life of desperation, and Ralph Waldo Emerson that talked about living a life of inspiration. Of course, you have a choice at any time on how you live, based on how you prioritize your actions and how you decide your your daily activities. Today, I'd like to talk to you about what I call the 7 words that describe the 7 levels of inspiration in your life, where you feel like you're either in control of your life or the world outside you controls you. So you might want to write some notes. This is something that might be useful. I've been involved in the language of this and the description of what I'm about to share with you for over 40 years, and watching this in people as they are engaged at work or in their life. And I really believe that this is worth considering and factoring into your daily thinking process. So let me just go ahead and give you the 7 stages or 7 levels of inspiration. At the bottom level, where you're living by duty and you feel like an external source is running your life and you're feeling obligated, where you're having to do something outside, you'll hear yourself in your language saying, I have to do this. I've got to do this. I must do this. Now, that's not something that's congruent with what you value most at that moment. It's something that's an injected value of some outer authority. Maybe it's a boss, maybe it's a spouse, maybe it's a preacher or teacher, it's somebody outside you that has you've inculcated and injected into your life about what you think you have to do or got to do or must do. And these are languages that is a resistance factor. There's no inspiration there. When you feel like you got to do it, you feel like there's a brake on and you're resisting what you're doing. And so anytime you hear yourself saying, I got to, I have to, I must, that's a lot of resistance inside because you feel like some outside force is doing this to you and you're having to respond to it. And you feel that this responsibility to get this thing done in a certain period of time or a certain way or to please somebody, etc. You don't say, I got to, I have to, I must on doing something that you're inspired by. It's just not something you say. You say, I love it. I'm inspired by it. Anyway, that's bottom level one. That's the first layer. That's got to, have to, must. So when you hear that, just know that there's a lot of resistance going on. It usually means that you're doing something extremely low on your values. Let me give you an example. A young boy who's maybe 12 years old who loves video games. He loves doing video games. He's inspired spontaneously to do video games. But his mom comes in and says, you need to do the chores. Oh, mom, I've got to do the chores. I have to do the chores. I must do the chores, or I can't play the video games. And once I do it, then I can play it. So we get outside influences directing that with that language. The next layer above got to, have to, and must, I found, and I found this working with doctors in clinics many years ago in the 80s, back in 1983, 84, I was noticing that the language in the staff, if they were doing something they loved to do, it showed. And they said, I love it. I'm inspired to do this. But when they feel like, I've got to do this, I have to do this, I must do this, that means that they're not really engaged and not inspired to do it. They feel like they're forced to do it. It's not the job. They don't see how that responsibility is helping them fulfill what's most meaningful to them. And that's why they say it, got to, have to, must. And whenever you see that language, you know in a business that the business is going down. They're disengaged. And people don't want to be at work. They don't want to do the work. People don't want to be around people that don't want to do the work. It affects the company. So I used to watch this and log people's comments and listen very carefully to find out how much engagement it was, which led me a lot to how important values are and making sure that you hire according to values and make sure you inspire teams according to values. Because if they're not, nobody goes to work for the sake of a company. They go to work to fulfill their values. If they feel they're getting their values met, they're engaged. But they're not engaged when they're saying, I got to, I have to, I must. The second layer is should, ought to, supposed to. I really ought to be doing this. I really should be doing this. I really am supposed to do this. Again, outside authority. This is something that you think you should be doing according to some outside authority. You don't ever should yourself. The shoulds that you say to yourself, I should have done this, I ought to do this, I'm supposed to have done this, is what they call the superego in Freud's term. It's an injected value from some outer authority that's maybe from previous earlier times in your life, or maybe currently in your boss, or maybe somebody you infatuated with and look up to, and you think, I should be working out like them. I ought to be working out like them. I got to, I got to do this. But this is another sign of an outside authority, again, injected. We don't realize that anytime you infatuate with somebody and put them on a pedestal, you inject their values, and then they're inculcated into your value structure. And then what happens is, when you're doing something that's not inspiring to you, that's not highest on your values, you listen to these languages. I got to, I have to, must. That means very disengaged. Should, ought to, supposed to. That means you're kind of self-depreciating and beating yourself up and not feeling fulfilled in it, but you know you should be doing it. It's not really highest on your value. You wouldn't be talking like that. When somebody says, I really should be exercising, it means I'm not really focused on exercise, but I know I should, according to what I've read or the person I'm comparing myself to. And anyway, there's all these ideals that we compare ourselves to, but each of those ideals also come from outside authorities in many cases. So should, ought to, supposed to is level 2. And got to and have to, must is the lowest inspiration. That's living by duty and obligation. Should, ought to, and supposed to is just above it. The next level is need to. I need to do this. I need to do that. And that is still an outside influence, but less resistant. You're not having the brakes on quite as strong, but you're still not necessarily inspired by it. It's a lower level of inspiration by any means. And again, you're not fully engaged in it. You can sort of see by doing it how you're going to get sort of what you want, but it's not something that's inner directed. See, whenever you hear got to, have to, must, should, ought to, supposed to, and need to, it's all outer directed. And I usually tell people when they tell me, oh, I should be doing this, according to who? And they stop and they look at me. But I got to do this, according to who? I had a gentleman the other day in my seminar, the breakthrough experience. He said, I've got to do this. I've got a family. And I said, okay. The got to is maybe not true, but what happens is you have not organized your life and prioritized your life and delegated things such that you could be free to do something more productive and more meaningful and more empowering, and delegating that. So we use these languages and we don't have strategies to get beyond the limits of those things we've injected from outer authorities. And so that's the thing. If you meet somebody that has a high value on family, and you're a woman that has a high value on business, and then the mother that has a high value on family says, well, you should be with your kids more. Now you're going out there, well, I'm now at work, which is high on your values, and now I say to myself I should because I've injected my mother's values in there. And that's, again, one of those outside authorities. So got to, have to, must, should, ought to, supposed to, and need to are all outer directed obligations and duties, deontological duties that you think you're supposed to live by, should live by, need to live by. These are, again, it's like driving with a brake on. You're causing friction. They're not 100% in the flow. You're not most efficient in your energy, and your energy is down. That's why when you feel like I got to do this, I have to do this, you're going frustrated. You burn out doing that or bored with it. The next level is want to. Now, the want to is the level, it's halfway up the scale. The want to is now where you are starting to participate in the activity. When you need to, it's an outside. When it's should, ought to, supposed to, it's outside. When it's got to and have to, must, it's outside. But want to is sort of you're starting to now participate and going, well, this is something that I get a value out of. And I don't do it because I have to. I don't do it because I should. I don't do it because I need to. I do it because I want to do it. So you're starting to get now a shift from an extrinsic motivation to an intrinsic motivation, from an extrinsic motivation to an intrinsic motivation. And this intrinsic motivation now is guiding you to, say, hey, this is what I'll do. You'll start to do this without a lot of resistance, and you're a little bit more inspired to do it. You're moving up the scale, but that's kind of the break even. And by the way, when I noticed this, when I was in doctor's office many years ago, I noticed that whatever they had scheduled on the appointment book in the morning, if they had, let's say, 70 patients scheduled in the morning, then what happened is by the end of the day, if I was hearing got tos and have tos and must, the volume dropped during the day. If I heard should, ought to, and supposed to, a little less. If I heard need to, even less. When I heard want to, it broke even. Whatever we scheduled, they had scheduled, that's what they typically saw. And so it was kind of like a break even. You break down when you're in the got tos, have tos, and must. You break even when you're in the want to level. You're halfway up the scale. When you go up the next level, you have the decision. You decide to do it. It's now a conscious decision where you're deciding to do that. So now it's not something external, it's something internal. And now the drive is going up, the inspiration is going up. You're starting to really desire, you have a burning desire, if you will, for it. You'd like to do it. And this is something that is now a little bit more fluent. You're not necessarily fighting the system. You're not having a duty. You're now having some design. I tell people, if you're not living by design, you'll live by duty. If you're not filling your day with high priority actions that inspire you, it fills up with low priority distractions that don't. And the low priority distractions that don't are all the got tos, have tos, must, shoulds, ought tos, supposed tos, need tos, below the want to level. But the desire to level is where you're now engaging, and now you're choosing to do this and wanting to do this, and there's an inspiration a bit that's starting to surface. On the next level, you have the choose to level. This is where you've made a conscious choice, where there's more advantage and disadvantage in your mind. You're now doing it because you really are looking forward to doing it. When I hear people, I choose to do this every day, this is what I love doing, I know I'm going towards an inspirational life. I also noticed when I was in practice and I was seeing doctors and I listened to the language of the staff and everything else, whatever was on the book, that went up another 10%. So we'd have maybe 77 patients coming in that afternoon. There was a correlation between the volume of the patients and the business, you might say, because that's just a business, and the engagement level. When you're in a got to and have to and must, you're disengaged. Should, ought to, supposed to, disengaged. When you're in the choice level and the desire level, you're partly engaged. You're now wanting to do this. And people, when you can't wait to get up and do something and want to do it, people can't wait to get that service. And there's a difference. When you get in a taxi, I used to live in New York, when you get in a taxi and you get in with a taxi, the person that's driving it, and you ask them how long you've been driving a taxi, and they look in the mirror and it's filthy and it's dirty and it's not really nicely kept. He says, about 2 years. And I said, you love it? And they'll look at me and they'll look in the mirror and they'll say, are you kidding? It pays the bills, man. And they're not engaged. Got to do it. Got to pay the bills. And then you meet somebody, they get in a taxi and whatever, and you said, how long you been driving a taxi? Oh, 25 years? Really? Say, yeah, my father did it. My grandfather did it. I love it. I know every street in this city, everything else. Here's my card. Anywhere you need to go, I'll go it. I love it. You can hear it. And they have a clean car and they're engaged and it's something that they have a value to. And that makes a difference in your life. It makes a difference in your business. It makes a difference in your relationship. So the next level beyond the choose to level is a love to level. And this is when you're actually, now I'm not talking about romantic love. I'm talking about a love where you're embracing and willing to embrace the pains and pleasures in the pursuit of this. It's something that's so inspiring to you that you can't wait to get up in the morning and do it. This is the thing you love doing. I love researching and writing and teaching. This is what my favorite things to do in life. I could do it all day long, and I do. And so this is what is inspiring to me. I love doing it. So the question is, are you filling your day with the things that you love, or are you filling your things with the things you got to? If you're in a got to level, you're disengaged. If you're in the love to level, you're fully engaged. And that does make a difference as far as the overall outcome in your life, as far as your vitality and etc. So I try to tell people, and when I teach the breakthrough experience, my signature program, I have them go through and do a value determination process. And once they've identified what their hierarchy of values is, this is the hierarchy of your values dictates your destiny. It determines how you perceive, decide, and act. So whenever you're filling your day with the very highest priority things that you're most inspired and engaged to do, that you really love to do, your freedom it goes up. You don't have a lot of duty and responsibilities that's down here that you feel like you're dreaded by. There's a burden. You're inspired. And if you delegate all the lower priority things to people who would love to do it and surround yourself with people that would love to do it, they're inspired, and you're surrounding yourself with people who are inspired, and you're inspired to go and do the things you love to do and delegate to things that aren't. And most people trap themselves in feeling obligated and living in got tos and have tos and musts and should, ought tos, supposed tos, and need tos, and sometimes want tos. Very few people literally give themselves permission to make a decision. That's why pre-planning, foresight, strategic planning, goal setting is so important. That's why in the breakthrough experience, we spend so much time on that topic. Because if you're not living by design, you're going to live by duty. If you're not being inspired by your life, it's going to be despired. If you're not filling your day with high priority actions, it's going to fill with low priority distractions. And all the distractions are all the things you feel you got to do, have to do. Such a distraction. When you get up in the morning and you have a prioritized, high priority agenda, and you knock it out of the ballpark and knock out the highest priorities, at the end of the day, you're more resilient, adaptable, you feel more fulfilled, you're on top of the world. When you feel like you've been putting out fires and doing what you have to do and got to do and must do all day long, and you feel like you've had duties instead of design, then what happens? You come home and you're now in your amygdala and you're more emotionally reactive, you're more impulsive and instinctual, more dramatic, and you end up having more frustrations. And the frustrations are the feedback from your world around there to guide you back to what's priority. Because when you're doing what's highest in priority, you're spontaneously inspired to act and you love doing it. So that's what you want to find. That's why I have people in the breakthrough experience do the value determination process and help them prioritize their life and clarify what's really important, not what they think it should be. When I ask people about their values, and I've been doing it for 46 years, asking people about their values, it's amazing. Some people say, well, it should be this, it ought to be this. And they're not realizing that they've injected somebody else's values and they're trying to live and fit in instead of stand out. Yet everybody, if you ask them how many want to make a difference, they all want to say, I want to make a difference. But you're not going to make a difference fitting in. You're doing it standing out. You're going to make a difference by being authentic and unique to you and living by what you really love. This is something that Warren Buffett has in one of his things to make sure you do what you love and love what you do. Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger said that. And I've been watching that. Almost everybody I know that's doing extraordinary things are loving what they're doing. They're inspired by it. And they've learned to delegate lower priority things and give other people who love doing those things the opportunity to do that and expand the economy and expand jobs and open up doorways of opportunity. And you're rewarded to the degree that you help other people get what they want to get in life by giving them job opportunities they love. So the bottom level is got to, have to, and must. The next level is should, ought to, supposed to. Then comes need to. Then comes want to. Then comes desire to. Then comes choice. And finally, I love it. And when you hear yourself saying, I love it, this is what I love doing, because whatever's highest on your value is what you spontaneously are inspired to act on. That's why in the breakthrough experience, I also teach people the Demartini method, which is on how to dissolve all the emotional baggage associated with the shoulds and ought tos and got tos and have tos and musts, all the resentments that build up, that accumulate as a result of that, all the infatuations and fantasies that you do as an escape from that, from the drudgery of that. I show people how to sort through their perceptions, dissolve the baggage that's holding them back, that's trapping them in the lower levels of the inspiration, and giving them freedom to go after what's really inspiring to them. And that's why the values in what I teach in the breakthrough experience, plus the Demartini method, are crucial for that. That's why I have people own the traits of the greats in the program by going and taking all the people that they put above them, that they've injected values from, and level the playing field. So you're no longer thinking they have something you don't. See, at the level of the highest level of your inspiration, the highest level of authority and authenticity in yourself, nothing's missing in you. You have whatever you see in the people you admire. You just haven't honored it. Once you honor that at the breakthrough experience, you give yourself permission to play in a new field, and you don't inject somebody else's values, and you don't live by the duties, you live by the inspirations in life. So I just wanted to take the moment to share with you that little message, because I really believe that that's something. I've been watching it now for 46 years, since the late 70s, and I'm certain what it does is makes a difference if you learn to prioritize your life and live by the priorities. That's why I tell people to come to the breakthrough experience, because in the breakthrough experience, I show you what those things are in more depth. I make you go through and experience it. We go through and analyze where they come from. We go through and have a tool on how to dissolve the influence of outer people's expectations and give ourselves permission to design our life the way we really want to design it. Because if nobody's getting up in the morning and dedicating their life to your fulfillment. It's up to you. So come and join me at the breakthrough experience so I can show you those tools. And just know that, listen to your language. Your language is revealing your degree of friction or fuel. And if you're basically living a quiet life of desperation and a victim of history, you're going to be going got to and have to, must all your life. If you're going to do something you really love to do, you're going to be a master of destiny. So I look forward to seeing you at the breakthrough experience, and thank you for joining me for this. I look forward to seeing you next week.